Welcome to the Odds Breakers, number one place for shared, sharp betting information.
What's happening? And welcome back to podcast 37 of 2019. I'm your host, Kiev O'Neill. You can tweet me at OBKiev or tweet us at the Odds Breakers. Follow us on social media / the Odds Breakers. We have a great show for you today. We have Roosie and Tub from the Heavy Chalk Show coming on to break down the AFC North, a little bit of Heisman odds. I'm big fans of these guys. They started around the time the Odds Breakers did, and we've collaborated back and forth. Can't wait to get them on. And we have Brian Edwards on from Brian Edwards Sports to discuss his specialty, which is, well, all of college football is his specialty, but he is extremely good at the SEC. So can't wait to get into that with him. So we are getting our YouTube channel rolling as well. We finally put something out there for you all, and it's going to be consistent. During the year, you'll get at least one pick in the football, whether it be NFL, college, or both. Sometimes multiple from the YouTube channel. So make sure you check us out there and subscribe. We have a pick for the Cincinnati and Kansas City preseason game. This episode is being sponsored by mybookie.ag. For a 50% sign-up bonus for first-time users, please visit MyBookie. Use the promo code TheOddsBreakers. Terms and conditions apply. If you'd like to help us out with our costs and sponsor our podcast, become a member. We would love to help you out. Please visit theoddsbreakers.com, click shop, and become a member for $12.99 a month. You can become a member and get my plays all year and premium plays before the line moves. For $2 more, you can have all that and become a patron subscriber, get the podcast a little bit early. And if nothing else, please visit theoddsbreakers.com and become a free picks newsletter subscriber. Well, my friends, we have a jam-packed show, like I said before. Want to get right to our guests? So without further ado, let's bring on Roosie and Tub from the Heavy Chalk Show. Now I'm very excited to bring in some guests that I've been a big fan of for a long time now. These guys know how to pick winners. They have a fantastic podcast. I'm happy to welcome Roosie and Tub from the Heavy Chalk Show to discuss the AFC North and some Heisman odds. You can follow them on Twitter at Heavy Chalk Show. Roosie, Tub, how the hell are you guys doing?
Real good, man. Real good. Yeah, appreciate you having us on. Been big fans of your show for a while now, so glad we were able to link up.
Heck yeah, man. You guys started when the Odds Breakers did too. We did some collaboration, some talking back and forth. It's been so cool how you guys have been growing and everything. I love listening to your pods, and you guys definitely have some really great picks out there. So super excited to bring you on. But just talking about, your team, the Cleveland Browns, how excited must you be for this season?
Yeah, man. It's unlike anything we've ever really experienced. We've been so bad since, me and Ty were both born in 91. So ever since we've been alive, we've been real rough. And the buzz is pretty unbelievable. Last year showed a lot of promise. Baker really showed out and, gave us a lot of hope. And then obviously this offseason's been pretty insane on the offensive and defensive side of the ball. So, trying to, keep our expectations at a moderate level, but, I think people have some really, really high hopes for the squad this year.
Yeah. Go ahead.
It's almost, I was just saying, it's almost hard to, we're trying to be, okay, let's be reasonable. We hardly have had a winning season since we've been alive, and we're trying to not get too excited. But then you look at the roster and you're like, we are just stacked all around both sides of the ball. And then Baker's out here just putting on a show even when he's at the Indians game. So we're pretty pumped up.
I believe it, man. And, I guess I maybe you compare it to the LeBron days, but football's bigger, right? I mean, you have to be even more excited than when he came. It was a big thing for Cleveland, but he's been a little bit wishy-washy with that team. So this has just got to be a whole new feeling here. We'll talk about Baker Mayfield, my man. Can you guys shotgun a beer like he did?
So it's funny. I kind of have a reputation of putting down some beers. Shotgun is not quite my thing. So when he did it, I mean, especially when he cracked it with his tooth, that was the next level thing that I definitely don't have in my repertoire. But shotgun, no. I think I would sit at a bar top and put down as many as he could, though.
That's a great answer, and that's I can verify that. Roosie can throw down some Miller Lights. I'm not even a huge beer guy. I'm okay at the shotgun. Never even crossed my mind to going with the teeth though. That was a big power play, and shout out to Baker on that one.
I've going to graduating from UW-Madison, I've had a shotgun a few beers myself, and I've won a few. I've won a few contests with this slamming thing, but I've never seen. Well, I think I might have seen it, but not remembered it. But the way Baker did that with just one try, he got one try and he killed it on camera was absolutely amazing, and it makes me feel like I have to do it, and I don't think I will because I'm terrified of ripping my lips into shreds from the beer can. So I'm just
no doubt.
That's always kind of been my fear. I got looking like Ronda Rousey after the Nunez fight or something. That
wasn't his first time doing it. That's for sure.
we know that, but hopefully you didn't have an early practice on Sunday is kind of what I was thinking. But that was killer, man. But it makes me wonder about this kid doesn't care. He's competitive. I think this is the exact attitude the Browns need. So, question about the hype though. You can see a lot of people jumping on the back. That sometimes for sports bettors is like one of those step back and wait a second type things. I don't know. Season win total is at 9. Are they a little overhyped? What do you guys think?
I think. I don't think we are overhyped. I know a lot of people. I think the over is a minus 140 range for the over of 9, but I think it's a pretty great number. Honestly, I like the over. I think the only way, and obviously we've had this discussion between me, my friends, my family since last season. The only way we don't have a 10 or 11 win season in my eyes is if Baker gets hurt. I think even if a guy like Odell gets hurt, we have enough people behind him. Even if Kareem Hunt or Chubb gets hurt, we have enough backers behind him to fill in the role. So I think the only thing we can't afford to have happen, to at least not to just get to the 9, but have 10 or 11 or 12, is if Baker gets hurt. So I don't think the hype's unwarranted. I think we're as talented as any team, definitely in the NFL this year, let alone in the last few years. Because I think at every single position we're pretty loaded up.
Mm-hmm. And Tub?
And I'm kind of in the same spot. I think we definitely have the talent to get there. And I feel that the AFC North is starting to take a step back. I mean, it's been such a strong, part of the NFL for the past 10 years. I think, Big Ben's getting up there. I don't know if he's going to fall off, losing Le'Veon. Obviously, James Conner stepped in and absolutely killed it. And I think everyone's kind of a fan of that guy, so it's good to see. But Bengals clearly haven't really had it figured out. Ravens, I don't know if Lamar's going to be answer quarterback or not. It'll be interesting to see if he can handle running the ball as much as they want to have him run the ball against some of those NFL D linemen. It'll be interesting, but I do think collectively the AFC North is all taking a little bit of a step back with some aging quarterbacks or new quarterbacks, and we're kind of coming into it with a full young squad. So the potential is there, and now we just need to put it into action.
Yeah, absolutely. The thing I questioned with receivers, they have guys like Landry. Was it Callaway, the other receiver?
Yeah.
Yeah. I was kind of surprised with that kind of talent that they even went for Odell. I almost thought that, and Odell Beckham's amazing. Obviously, we all know that.
Yeah.
But I almost thought that maybe the offensive line could have used a little bit of extra juice there. So I guess that would be my only concern. there. I mean, the Browns had so many, like you said, since you were born, top draft choices that it had happened someday. And now you have a coach that a lot of people like, Freddie Kitchens there.
Yeah,
and
big Freddie guy. Yeah,
and I hated Hugh Jackson. I didn't. I didn't think that he was worth head coach at all, and I was shocked he didn't get fired the first year. And so there's even more help there. I think your schedule was hard last year too, and I think it's easier this year. So
I agree on that as well.
It's even ranked as far as a Vegas win total. It's actually one of the easier ones, so that's awesome. It's kind of a nice clear path. Steelers, I don't know. James Conner, I thought that he did great at the beginning of the season, but at the end of the season he was fumbling a little bit. The Steelers missed the playoffs.
I agree.
And but then they get rid of Brown, and maybe that gives Big Ben a little bit more control of the team. I don't know. One team I don't like a lot is the Ravens. I think they're going to be figured out with Lamar Jackson there.
Mm-hmm.
I think that whole run game, there's just going to be a lot of box stacking, and they better keep that defense alive and well, because that's going to be the only way that they're going to be winning games. I've never been a Lamar Jackson guy. I think the Bengals are going to come in with a chip on their shoulder because everyone's fading the hell out of them. But they have a very weak offensive line, probably the worst in the NFL maybe. So that's a huge concern for the Bengals. I do think they might get over 6 games, but right now, this is the division that I couldn't figure out too well, and I think it's between the Steelers and the Browns personally. So best of luck to you guys.
I think we appreciate it. I think as a division, it's kind of interesting because 3 teams have huge question marks because obviously the Steelers lost their 2 best players. I mean, we're so young, and we've been such losers for so long, and obviously Lamar Jackson at quarterback. And so I think the Bengals are probably, I agree, they're going to have a chip on their shoulder because everyone is fading them, but they're also probably going to, for the other 3 teams, when it's in division, I think that everyone's going to come in and be like, okay, we got to beat the shit out of the Bengals because they're, we got to get these 2 wins against them in division type of thing. So, I think the other, I think it's between us and the Steelers. I think the Steelers just have enough of a winning tradition, and Ben knows how to win games. But I don't know. Obviously, I'm going to be biased and tip my cap to the Brownies.
Yeah, it's a little different coming in too when you're the favorite, because now everyone's like, "Oh, what? The Browns are favorite over me." It's just one of those things. Can you win as a favorite? It's different. It's different winning as a dog and as a favorite, and this is kind of where it comes in. But I'll tell you this: your quarterback's proved it, because he did it at Oklahoma a couple years. He's always kind of been the underdog before, and then when they were favored, they were still putting the pedal to the metal there in Oklahoma. So love that about Baker Mayfield. Are you taking any bets on the other teams in this division, like betting the under for season win totals or any other futures?
I'm going to try to stay away from the Browns just so I can be a fan and not have to lose money on as well as if it goes south. But I think like you kind of said, I think the Ravens. I see the total at 8. I think I could see him going 7 or 9 very easily. I think it's a very, like you said, they're going to be very, very one-dimensional. Not going to have much stuff downfield. So I think once teams stack the box, and I think they're going to run an offense that I think Carlos Hyde's their one right now, and I don't think he's the greatest fit with that type of. He's not as much of a speed guy as I feel like they probably could use. So I don't know. I think the Ravens under is probably one that I am looking at, and you're catching a little bit of odds with it as well. But other than that, that's an in division that I love.
Yeah, and I'll actually just
go ahead.
Second that. Of the AFC North, I would lean the Ravens under. And I've seen it someplace at 8.5, and I'd really obviously the juice on the under moves a little bit, but I don't see him getting the 9 wins this year. With a couple, between us and the Steelers, and then there's some out of conference games won't be too bad, but a 9-win season's a really good season, and we saw Lamar Jackson in the playoffs, and when teams have time to prep for him and have him a little more figured out, I think it's going to be a hard season for him.
Yeah, I misspoke. Ingram is what I meant.
Yeah,
Carlos Hyde.
Yeah, Carlos Hyde.
They're built the same, but they're not the.
Yeah,
the pudgy running back a little bit.
Yeah, they kind of are. I was shocked when Kansas City got high. It doesn't fit their system at all. Maybe they'll just use them on the goal line. So I was really confused about that. But Ingram, just the same old thing over there, just pounding the running back. So we'll see if that comes to fruition. Hey, let's get a Browns-Bears Super Bowl. What do you say, right? That'd be.
Oh man!
We'll have to do our own podcast. We'll have to do another podcast if that's the case for sure. Right before that, so that would be absolutely amazing. Well, sweet man. Last question here. Let's talk a little bit about the Heisman Trophy, my man. So Tua and Trevor, those are the guys that are huge favorites to win this. Do you see anybody else possibly being in contention or anybody worth taking a shot at?
So I got those two guys at 250 and 275 respectively. That is like pretty weak odds for, just winning the Heisman is so tough to do because someone can have a freak season and, have a one-loss year and they're very much in the front-running position. I think Justin Fields, obviously, again, probably a little bit of bias here, but he's at 9-1. Going to be an offense at Ohio State that lights it up. He's going to be obviously the focal point. He's going to put up crazy numbers. We have a very good chance of having an 11-1, maybe 12-0 type record, getting into the playoffs. Going to be in the bright lights every single week. So at 9-1, kind of don't hate that. And it's an absolute flyer. I guess I could throw a guy in like Khalil Tate out of Arizona, puts up like. In the early parts of last year, he put up absolutely insane numbers. So who knows if all these guys up top have rough years and he just goes insane and puts up thousands and thousands of passing and rushing yards, ton of touchdowns. Who knows? Maybe that has a flyer. Maybe he gets the invite, to the ceremony.
Yeah. Khalil Tate was the guy I thought of last year too, compared to like the Lamar Jackson, but unfortunately Kevin Sumlin's his coach, and I think that was their big downfall over there. But I'll tell you this: Arizona did do a lot better at the end of the year last year, so they blew that Arizona State game, and I was shocked about that. But there you go. That's a great crazy one to look at there. So loving that, man. I haven't made a Heisman bet yet, but I think if there's a way I do it, you maybe put double the amount on either Tua or Trevor, and then you go smaller on one of those long shots. And I haven't decided if I was going to do that yet. But there's a few diamonds in the rough out there, I think. It really depends upon how you're feeling about somebody that can win their conference. I think Baylor's a really sneaky team this year. They get a ton of people at home. They get Oklahoma at home. They get Iowa State at home. They get Texas at home. And maybe they're down, Maybe these teams are down. And you got Charlie Brewer under a Matt Rule offense, sitting there at 200-1. Is it possible with all these home games that this Matt Rule is going to take him above? He had 3,000 yards last year, 19 TDs, 9 interceptions. Not great, but he's just going from hard to easy schedules. So that's just one to think about. I'm not saying I'm doing this one, but definitely one to think about. Well, guys, man, thank you so much for coming on. Really appreciate talking about the AFC North and everything. You guys are a plethora of knowledge in that division. Can't wait to get to this football season. We're definitely going to be tweeting at each other. Our listeners are going to appreciate you guys, and can't wait to talk soon.
Appreciate it, brother, for sure, man. Appreciate it.
Now I am very excited to welcome back a longtime contributor and friend to the show. You've heard him on many sports radio shows in the South and actually all over the nation. You can find some of his work on VegasInsider.com with his picks and some content at MajorWager.com. I'm very happy to welcome back Mr. Brian Edwards from BrianEdwardsSports.com and the Games Galore podcast. You can follow him at Vegas B. Edwards. How you doing, Brian?
Doing great, Kia. Thanks so much for having me. Looking forward to doing another show with you. Let's break down some pigskin.
Hey, man, no one knows the Southern Conference like you, the Southeastern SEC, and I'm very excited to have you back, my man. Again, we got a Gators fan here. The Gators are on the up and up. We got Alabama just looking like strongest team. It's just so much to talk about with this conference, man. But unfortunately, from a gambling perspective, I don't know what you're going to throw at us, but the SEC is probably the most paid attention conference when it comes to the bookies, the sports books, and Vegas in general, isn't it?
Yeah, for sure. I've been over in Biloxi, Mississippi this week, and you know how you're in Vegas and they have the sheets, for like, let's say we're week 3 or week 4, they have the sheets and then the futures for every sport, et cetera. In Biloxi, they actually have a sheet just for the SEC games. It's pretty sweet.
Oh, that's awesome, my man. Real quick before we get into that, well, actually, you know what? You just brought something up, Brian. But there's sports wagering in Biloxi and Mississippi is a full go right now, right?
Yeah, they legalized and started taking bets on actually a year ago today. It was August 1st that they started taking bets in last year, 2018. So a lot of the books I was kind of bouncing around all week, and a lot of the books already had a decent setup, because they've had casino gambling in Mississippi since 1992. So there were already the casinos built. They just didn't have the sportsbook part, and it was interesting to see how much progress some of them had made, particularly at the Beau Rivage, which is an MGM resorts company. Steve Wynn built it back in the late 90s. And the Beau Rivage, they just had this one counter last fall. I went over there for 2 football weekends, and I was over there for the first weekend of March Madness. And now they just opened in the last month this huge book that's got these enormous TVs. I was talking to the sportsbook manager. He said if he wanted to, he could break down one of the big screens into 32 different ball games that you could see on that screen if you wanted to. So yeah, they've upped their game in Biloxi, and it's a pretty good setup right now.
Well, maybe you can tweet us a few of those pictures, my man. I hope if you took some while you're there. That sounds like a full-blown Westgate-looking sports book or something like that.
Yeah, and I'm writing a couple stories for Major Wager that'll be published here in the coming days.
Fantastic, man. They don't have the app yet, though, in Mississippi where you can just bet from your phone yet, right? No. Okay. New Jersey looks like it's leading the way. Well, obviously, Vegas has had it, but with that. But that's something bigger than people think, I think every state needs to get on board with technology here. Hopefully they figure that out soon. Otherwise, they're just missing out on some action, as far as I'm concerned. That's awesome. Biloxi. I need to make it down there one of these days. I'll let you know if that happens anytime soon, my man. But let's get into a little SEC here. You got Alabama, the king of the SEC, ever since Saban arrived, and shit, man, they're minus what, 300, 350 in some books to win the SEC. What do you think about old Alabama this year? Is there any value on betting on them?
Well, I think that, I don't like the win total. I'm not going to go over 11.5. They are favored by 13 or more in every game that's lined in the games of the year. The game at Auburn, most books have them minus 13. That's their shortest spread. They're going to be great. And, it's probably going to be a Clemson-Alabama showdown in the playoffs yet again. But obviously a lot of football to play before then. And look, things happen during the course of a season. Life happens over a 4 or 5 month stretch, injuries, suspensions, team chemistry issues, what have you. And that's why it looks like it'll be Clemson-Alabama. But, some injuries here, a sprained ankle from Trevor Lawrence or Tua at an inopportune time, and that could change in an instant. So we got to let them play out. But looking at Bama, they got 6 starters back on each side of the ball. Most of their skill players are back. Ruggs, Jerry Jeudy. They did lose Damian Harris out of the backfield, but they're loaded with nothing but 5-star running backs. Right. They lost Josh Jacobs as well, but they've got Najee Harris and a bunch of 5-star guys, it's like the over 60.5 points, because I think Alabama can score as many as they want, and I just trust Cutcliffe that he'll find a way to get 14 or 17. And Duke's actually got a quarterback in Quentin Harris who started 2 games last year and won them both and had a 7-to-1 TDI&T ratio. But look, if barring a rash of injuries, or if just the Auburn's young quarterbacks are really, really good, Alabama should be a double-digit favorite in every game. But at Auburn, the last game of the regular season, that could just be a matter of who's healthy. Because, look, Auburn's got a great defense. So that would be the one game I would say, they might lose. At Mississippi State, I'll just point out that Mississippi State has 2 weeks to prepare, and Alabama has to play LSU the week before. But it's just a reload thing for Alabama this year. They'll be great.
Yeah, absolutely. And you did cut off when you were talking about the Duke game. Did you say you're taking that over Alabama versus Duke?
Yeah, sorry about that. Over 60.5 points. I think Bama can score as many as they want, and I trust Cutcliffe to get 14 or 17.
It's funny. I didn't even know until I think earlier today when I looked at their depth chart who's backing up Tua. I don't know much about this Mac Jones guy, if he's the correct guy.
He was a 4-star kid. They've actually got Tua's younger brother, but I'm sure he's going to redshirt.
Oh yeah, for sure. And unless obviously catastrophe happens and they start getting some injuries, like you said. But there's definitely never going to take over 11 at Juice or over 11.5 on any team. Just like you said, Clemson lost to Syracuse 2 years ago. I mean, it could happen. There's hiccups that can happen. The ball bounces in funny ways, my man. Well, I'm guessing Georgia's the next best team in the SEC according to your power ratings, right?
Yeah, I've got Georgia third, Alabama second, Clemson first. Georgia, the one position group of concern is the wide receiver position. They lost their top 3 guys, and then Jeremiah Holloman got kicked off the team about a month or so ago. Now, they've recruited well at the position, and they do have former 5-star Demetrius Robertson, kid out of Savannah that actually went to Cal all the way out west, had a good freshman season, but got hurt early in his sophomore year and took a red shirt. And he was able to transfer and was eligible immediately last year, but they only played him on special teams for the most part. But he is the guy to watch because he's got blazing speed. He's a short guy, though. But they've recruited well. They just have no experience at wide receiver. So that'll be challenging for Jake Fromm, but he's got DeAndre Swift, and he's got an elite offensive line, and they're going to be terrific on defense. Florida's going to be their biggest competitor. That's November 2nd in Jacksonville. But I will point out also that Georgia has to play at Auburn after they play Florida, then they play Missouri at home, and then they play at Auburn. And Auburn's got 2 weeks to prepare for that game. And I'll also note that Missouri gets 2 weeks to prepare when they come to Athens. But, Florida will be their toughest test. And then at Auburn could also be a tricky spot for them. Remember, they lost at Jordan-Hare 2 years ago.
Absolutely, man. Wow. Couple tricky spots. I guess we're a little thin at wide receiver. We'll see how that Cal transfer goes. They lost a few linemen. Swift should step right in at running back. Definitely not worried about him. They lost a lot of linebackers over the last 2 years. That's interesting. I would wonder if there's anything worth looking on the season win total market on them. Have you looked at that?
It's 11 at most spots. I could see them losing one game, but, games of the year wise, they're around 11 at home against Notre Dame. They're 7 to Florida. I feel like I've seen like 6.5 or 7 for the game at Auburn. They may go 11-1. In other words, I'm passing on the season win total. I mean, they could possibly go 10-2, lose to Florida and Auburn. They also have Texas A&M at home, and that's after the Auburn game. But look, Georgia's going to be favored in every game, barring a ridiculous rash of injuries.
Yeah, I haven't made any plays. I would lean to the under 11. On betonline.ag, I see them at 10.5 juiced to the over, so unders plus money. The thing about, I would wonder if that whole hangover about the stupid boneheaded Kirby Smart play against Bama is still affecting them.
What a moron,
dude! And you saw it affect them in the bowl game. Now they're transitioning a ton of players out, and I don't know, man. I'm gonna have to look at that one a little bit more. But I don't think I'll have any future bets on these guys. There's no value really there either, my man. Well, who do you have next? Who's next in the rankings here?
Well, wait, I'm sorry. Say that again.
Who do you have next in your SEC power ratings? I would guess your Gators or LSU.
Well, I've got LSU rated ahead of my Gators. 8 starters back on offense and defense for the first time in like a decade and a half. LSU goes into a football season feeling confident and good about a proven quarterback, and that's what Joe Burrow did for them last year. 16-5 TD-INT ratio. He ran for 7 touchdowns. He managed the game well, and that's what you need at LSU because you know you're going to have a powerful O-line and a stable of running backs. They usually have multiple future first-round picks in the backfield. That wasn't the case last year, but they've got some young running backs coming in, and you know they do have some. John Emery is the freshman that they're really high on, but they've also got Edwards-Helaire coming back, and the younger Fournette. So, but the thing you like about LSU is Burrow, and they've got their top 5 pass catchers back. They have got, I'm looking at my magazine as I'm driving down the interstate. If I'm counting it right, 5 of their top 6 tacklers back. You know, it was a defense that gave up 21.8 points per game last year. Dave Aranda, their DC, is one of the best in the business. I think LSU is going to be really good. They do have to go to Alabama, however. They get Florida and Auburn at home. They also have to go to Texas. Their win total is 9 flat. I think that's about right considering the degree of difficulty on some of their games. But, I mean, I won't be surprised if they go 10-2. LSU is set for another outstanding season.
They are, and your Gators did get them last year. I thought their schedule kind of set up pretty good for them. That Auburn game, I think Auburn more blew that. They got Georgia before Georgia played Florida, a little bit of a look ahead there. Then they played Bama later and didn't score a point. No, I think you're right. 8.5 or 9 is probably right on this team. But hey, everyone was low on them last year, and Ed Orgeron kind of proved himself, and that's what everyone's thinking. And the fact that the quarterback's returning, definitely don't want to be too quick to fade that number. So I get what you're saying there. Well, who do you have next?
I've got the Gators next. I have them power rated at number 7. The Gators. They opened with Miami. I like them -7 in Orlando, week 0, August 24th. I'm sure, people not from the South or Florida probably think of Orlando as a neutral venue, and it is location-wise, but handicapping-wise, trust me, from a noise crowd standpoint, it'll be at least 75% Gators. So I don't think handicappers, gamblers, what have you, I don't think they should think of it as a neutral game. I think they should think of it not necessarily at the Swamp, but sort of at Gators. It just started pouring, Kiev. Let me know if my sound is off.
No worries. You sound great. Maybe like a 1.5, 2 point little edge for Florida there.
Yeah, I think that would be the right way to put it there. But I lean over on Florida's win total. At 9, you can get some plus money on the over. They go 10-3 straight up last year. 9-4 against the spread, 8 starters back on defense, 5 on offense. Mullen did a terrific job with Felipe Franks. And Florida has got more experience and production coming back at the receiver group in at least a decade. They're loaded at receiver: Kadarius Toney, Trayvon Grimes, Van Jefferson, Tyree Cleveland, who caught the Hail Mary from Franks against Tennessee 2 years ago. They're just absolutely loaded in the secondary as well. They also had Jonathan Greenard, Louisville's best pass rusher in 2017. He transferred in, and they get Marco Wilson back. He's Quincy Wilson's younger brother, and Marco started all 11 games as a true freshman, but tore his ACL in week 2 against Kentucky last year, but he's back. So I kind of think of it as like 10 starters coming back on defense rather than 8.
Oh, yeah. That guy, I mean, a lot of experience from Louisville Greenard has, right? He's coming in polished. That's like a returning starter. I completely agree with you there, man. I don't want to fade Dan Mullen. There's no way. After seeing how they played down the stretch last year, beating teams like South Carolina, whipped at Florida State, and obviously the Michigan game, you can't take too much into that, but they still dominated them. I mean, they look good, and I'll tell you this. Felipe Franks shocked me last year. I wasn't that high on him, and I don't think you were before the season started. And
no.
This guy looked completely different under Dan Mullen, didn't he?
Yeah, I still don't necessarily trust him in his decision-making, but I trust Mullen's play calling. But just in terms of size and talent, I mean, Franks has got size, and he proved last year to be a willing and physical runner between the tackles. If he can keep improving the mental side of things, maybe he will be an NFL quarterback. But, I mean, again, I don't necessarily trust him in a big game still yet. I mean, he was awful in all 3 of the losses against Kentucky. Georgia, he missed the flea flicker. You had Van Jefferson 10 yards behind the defense. He overthrows him by like 10 yards. He was bad in the 3 losses, but in the last 4 games, he had 8 touchdown passes without an interception and 4 rushing touchdowns. So hopefully Gator fans like myself, hopefully he'll pick up where he left off last year.
Right. Well, their toughest games are at LSU, at Missouri, Georgia, obviously, and played in Jacksonville, and then maybe at South Carolina. So they got to win one of those to get to 9. But I do like the non-conference. Miami's looked in bad the last year and a half. Towson and then UT Martin. So you can pencil those in, right? So that makes the 9 look a little bit better. All right, who you got next here in your power ratings, Brian?
Let's see. I have Auburn next, and Auburn is, to me, the wild card of the conference because I think they have the best defensive line in the country with Marlon Davidson, Derek Brown, and Nick Coe. That trio combined for 15 sacks last year. They're going to be very salty defensively, and their entire O-line is back. Now, they kind of struggled to run it last year, so, I don't know if it's good or bad that the whole O-line is back, but, I mean, most publications have their O-line ranked as one of the top 10 in the country. Their wide receivers, Eli Stove and Will Hastings, both missed pretty much all of last year, and those guys are back, and they were key contributors in 2017. The quarterback position is going to come down to redshirt freshman Joey Gatewood or true freshman Bo Nix, who is the son of Patrick Nix, who was an outstanding quarterback for Auburn in the mid-'90s. Nix was a 5-star. Most recruit gurus, if you will, had him as the second-best quarterback coming out of high school in this 2019 class. So, I've talked to a lot of Auburn people. They all seem to think that Gatewood's going to get the first shot. Obviously, they opened with Oregon at Jerry World. But if he struggles week 4, they're at A&M. And if Gatewood doesn't play well early, I think it'll be Bo Nix's job by then. We shall see. But Auburn's going to be really solid. They do have to go to Florida. They do have to go to LSU. But like in 2017, they get Georgia and Alabama at home, and that beating them not only saved Malzahn's job last year, 2017, 2 years ago, it got him a lucrative extension. But the school president that pushed so hard for that extension was shown the door. They paid him off several $1 million just 2 years into a 5-year contract to get rid of him so he would be out of the way if they want to make a move on Malzahn. And if they lose at LSU and that's their third loss, they may pull the trigger right there. I'm not saying that that'll be the case, but if it is, they may pull the trigger right there and not give Malzahn the chance to save his job with wins over Georgia and Alabama at home. That's how disgruntled a good portion or the majority portion of the Auburn fan base, which is one of the more finicky fan bases in America to begin with.
Wow. Well, I'll tell you this, man. I have them lower than Florida too, but I think I actually have Texas A&M a little bit above them. Just changing out the quarterbacks, it almost sounds like Bo Nix is kind of like Graham Mertz from Wisconsin, enrolled early, got that first semester under him in the spring, looking the best, though. That could happen. But you're right, Gus Malzahn, I've been hearing for a couple of years now all the whispers about him. So I would lean under, but definitely not a play for me. Too many questions. But I'm guessing that you have Texas A&M next.
I do, and the concern with A&M is defensively. They lost. I can't. I'm looking down at my magazine. They either lost their top 6 or 7 tacklers. They only have 4 starters coming back on defense. So that's the concern for me with the Aggies. They go 9-4 straight up last year, 10-3 against the spread. Very solid year one for Jimbo Fisher. He recruited very well. Kellen Mond, established himself as the guy, and Nick Starkel moved on. He's actually moved on within the division. He's at Arkansas this year. But, look, I think they're very solid at wide receiver. They do lose Travion Williams. You look at the schedule, like South Carolina, they have to play Clemson and Alabama, actually have to go at Clemson. They do get Bama at home. They get Mississippi State and South Carolina at home, but they close the year with 2 brutal games at Georgia and at LSU. The win total, 7.5 with some heavy juice on the over. I mean, I think you look at A&M's schedule and you confidently mark 7 wins and 4 losses, and then the one swing game, or actually I marked Mississippi State at home as a swing game, but I think they'll win that. I think they'll go 8-4, but I can't recommend over 7.5 with some expensive juice on the over, but I think they go 8-4.
No, definitely not. But I do like what Jimbo Fisher's doing over there, and I think they're the year away. If Kellen Mond stays, he's a junior, this is the team you might want to start at looking at this time next year. But, they do have one of the hardest schedules, top 5 hardest schedules, so I'm not even messing with them at all. So who do you have next?
Oh, let's see. I have Mississippi State next, and they go 8-5 straight up and against the spread last year. I thought they really wasted a once-in-a-generation greatness on the defensive side of the ball last year. I mean, they only allowed 13.2 points per game last year, but yet lost 5 games. And they lose Nick Fitzgerald, their 3rd all-time leading in career passing yards, 2nd all-time in school history in career rushing yards. They lose him, and I would say right there with Auburn and probably your boys, Wisconsin, one of the more interesting QB situations to monitor, in August and throughout the year. They've got Tommy Stevens, who transferred from Penn State. That's where Moorhead was under James Franklin as offensive coordinator. So they have that familiarity. Now, Stevens always got playing time at Penn State, and he's an athletic guy, but he's never started. Whereas Keaton Thompson, when Fitzgerald got hurt in the first half of the Egg Bowl in 2017, Thompson came in, Didn't play well in the first half. He settled down in the second half, played better, rallied them a little bit. And then in the bowl game, he outplayed Lamar Jackson, ran for 147 yards and 3 touchdowns and helped them to a 31-27 win. Now, last year, when Fitzgerald was suspended for the opener, he started against Stephen F. Austin, and he threw 5 touchdown passes without an interception, but he was only 13 of 31 throwing, so the accuracy is not there. But Thompson and Stevens can both run it. They've got their stud running back, Kylan Hill, back. They weren't very prolific with the passing game last year, but they've got their top 3 wideouts back, but they lost a lot on defense, a lot of NFL players. They do have Errol Thompson back. He's a preseason All-SEC guy. You look at the schedule, they've got to go at Auburn. They do get 2 weeks to prepare for at Tennessee, and Tennessee will have to play Georgia the week before. So situationally, that favors them. But they also have to go at Texas A&M. Now, again, with a situational standpoint, they do get 2 weeks to prepare for Alabama, and I think I mentioned that talking about the Tide. Mm-hmm. And Alabama will be coming off LSU. And remember, Mississippi State gave them fits 2 years ago in Starkville. Actually had that 7-point lead in the fourth quarter and let it get away. But I look at Mississippi State, and I think they're going to go 8-4. They've got a 4-game stretch that's really difficult at Auburn, at Tennessee, LSU at home, and at A&M. I mean, I've got them going 1-3 during that stretch. If they could steal another one, maybe they could get to 9 wins, but I've got them as an 8-4 team.
Well, there you go, man. I'll be circling that Alabama game then, thinking about what you said 2 years ago, how they gave them fits like that. And, this could be when they're a little bit more developed. I like how it's in November, so the team might come together with all that young talent that they have on defense. That's interesting. That's a very interesting spot. Could point in that out. I would guess Missouri might be next for you, right?
I have South Carolina 1 spot ahead of Missouri, but excuse me, Kiev. My power rankings are based on one thing only. If I were the bookie, who would I make favorite over whom on a neutral field tomorrow? In other words, I'm not – sorry, took too big a sip of water there. I'm not projecting South Carolina to have a better record than Missouri because South Carolina's brutal schedule. But I do have South Carolina power rated just 1 spot ahead of Missouri. I mean, you got a 4-year starter in Jake Bentley. You've got Brian Mama Can't Spell Edwards, spells it with a Y at receiver. If Bentley and Edwards have just pretty good years by their standards, after this senior year of theirs upcoming, they will be the all-time leaders in career passing yards and career receiving yards at South Carolina. They've also got a really good receiver in Shi Smith. They just got Tavian Feaster from Clemson, so they are 3 deep at the running back position. Also have Rico Dowdle, who's been starting for several years. And you also look at the defense. T.J. Brunson's a preseason All-SEC guy. They get D.J. Wanham back. He was their best D lineman in 2017, but he got hurt early last year and did not play much at all last year. In fact, they had 9 true freshmen on the field on defense for a big chunk of the Clemson game. That's how battered and bruised they were on the defensive side late in the year. But the schedule's just brutal, though. I mean, I think they'll probably go 6-6, maybe 7-5. But I think that would be a good season. I mean, they have their games from the West are at A&M when A&M's got 2 weeks to prepare. They host Alabama. They have to go to Georgia. They have to go to Tennessee. Even in non-conference, I mean, they've got App State. That's not a layup for anybody.
No.
So it's going to be tough sledding for South Carolina, but I think Will Muschamp has his best team talent-wise, but it might not show up in the win-loss column.
I think this might be the hardest schedule in college football. I cannot believe they have to play Alabama and Clemson, and then you throw in Georgia, Florida, and Texas A&M. At Missouri. You're looking at like 6 games of top 15 opponents there, 4 top 8. It's absolutely
one of the best group of 5 teams in App State.
Oh, I know App State has been so underrated, and I'm pretty high on that team again. I got to tell you, yeah, I was considering taking the under 5.5 plus money, but I know how coaches fight to get that 6th win to be bowl eligible. I was looking at, I was seeing if you were going to talk me into it, but you're saying 6 or 7 maybe. But I'll tell you, man, they could call this a season pretty early if they're not winning. They better beat North Carolina. I mean, if they lose that game, it's going to be a bad year. But
yeah, I like South Carolina in that game -7. As long as it doesn't go north of 7, I'm a believer in the Gamecocks there. They've covered in that game. They've played in Charlotte a bunch of times the last 5 or 6 years.
All right, well, let's move on to a team that seems to have a much easier schedule, Missouri. I got to tell you, they lost their quarterback, but they got transfer Kelly Bryant from Clemson with a big chip on his shoulder coming in looking to prove some people wrong. Then you look at this schedule; it's not bad. West Virginia's super down year. They host at Wyoming. That's a win. Southeast Missouri State. That's a win. Then they got South Carolina at home. They got Troy. Ole Miss should be still down at Vanderbilt, at Kentucky. They don't even get hard games until November 9th at Georgia, Florida, Tennessee, and then Arkansas might be a little bit more of a layup. So what are your thoughts on Missouri?
Well, we got a big thing coming up. Right now they've got a 1-year bowl ban, but they've got an appeal hearing coming up here it's pretty soon. It might even be next week. I'm not positive on the date, but there seemed to be at SEC Media Days a quiet confidence that they're going to be able to get this thing appealed and be able to go to a bowl game and be eligible for the SEC championship game. And you noted, Kiev, the schedule early on. I mean, I'm not saying they're going to go 8-0, but there's a chance. I tell you what, I mean, they're certainly not going to be – they might not be an underdog in any of those games, and if so, it's not going to be by more than like 3. So, I mean, there is a potential of being 8-0 with 2 weeks to prepare going to Athens. But, they got a lot of football to play before that. But, yeah, Bryant, that's a great replacement for Locke. They've got a terrific running back in Roundtree. They've got the best tight end in the country, according to most. They should be really good offensively. Cale Garrett back on defense after 112 tackles last year. I do worry about their defense, though. Mm-hmm. They gave up 25.5 points per game last year. They've got 6 starters back on that side. Barry Odom was a defensive guy, a D coordinator for Gary Pinkel, but they have not been that good on defense since he took over. They need to improve on that side of the ball, but the schedule looks really, really easy. And, I mean, I could see them maybe going 9-3. I would think that they will probably trip up in one of the games at Vandy and at Kentucky in back-to-back weeks. I could see Vandy or Kentucky possibly beating them. But it should be a solid year for Missouri. And, if they get this postseason ban overturned and then get off to a hot start, it'll be high optimism out in Columbia.
Well, you know what? 5.68 yards per play they gave up on defense last year. A little bit too much there. Big questions there, but I'll tell you this. I think I would have took them when it opened at over 7.5. It's at over 8 juiced at -140 from the places I'm looking at. So I'm not super interested, but I'll tell you, as far as a schedule, Missouri definitely looks attractive. All right, so who does that bring next for Mr. Brian Edwards?
Okay, let's go. I am a little more bullish than most on this Vanderbilt team, and I understand the concerns in that defensively. They gave up 26.6 points per game last year. That's not horrible, but they've only got 5 starters back, and they lost a couple of players that got drafted. But look, offensively, I mean, when have we ever had where this is like a true statement? This is literally true. They have 3 of the best players in America on offense. I mean, Keyshawn Vaughn is an absolute stud. I mean, his yards per carry average was 7.9 yards per carry last year behind a Vanderbilt offensive line. Jared Pinkney is one of the better tight ends in the country. I know Phil Steele had him preseason third-team All-American. And then Khalija Lipscomb led the SEC in catches last year, had 9 touchdown grabs. I mean, those 3 guys are really good. And then you've got Riley Neal coming in from Ball State, 32 career starts, 7,393 passing yards, 46 to 25 TDI ratio. And he's also got 15 career rushing touchdowns, so he can move. I think Vanderbilt is a dangerous team. You look at the schedule; it's they got Georgia and LSU at home, so those are 2 double-digit home dog spots. At Purdue in week 2, I actually have them winning that game, but they might be a little bit of a dog there. They get Missouri at home, but they got to go at South Carolina, at Florida. I will note they have 2 weeks to prepare for the South Carolina game. There are 7-point dog games of the year at Tennessee, but let's keep in mind they've beaten Tennessee by double-digit margins 3 years in a row. And as long as Derek Mason keeps doing that, he doesn't have to worry about his job security.
Well, I got to tell you, man, you know about Vanderbilt, well, more about Vanderbilt than anyone that I know. You did your homework, sir. I am extremely impressed by that breakdown, and that's some good stuff, man. And I like it when you're high on a team and you're taking that risk, like you are, putting yourself out there, throwing them ahead of like Tennessee and Kentucky. I did the same thing with Minnesota in the Big Ten West, and I have a lot of reasons for it, similar to kind of some of the things that you said. So, absolutely love that, man. I'll be keying in on this team. Who do you have next? And I'm guessing it's going to be the Vols or the Wildcats.
Yeah, both of these teams, they're a wash, really, to me. I think they're about even. I will note that Kentucky gets Tennessee at home and gets 2 weeks to prepare, and Tennessee doesn't have 2 weeks to prepare. So I would favor Kentucky to win that game. Breakout season last year for Mark Stoops, but most of those guys are gone. Only four starters back on defense, and their second leading returning tackler, Devontae Robinson, just got a season-ending injury last week.
Oh.
So that's a bummer for them. Now, on the positive side, they probably got one of the top 5 O-lines in the SEC. They're very good at O-line. And, Benny Snell's backup, A.J. Rose, was very good last year. And Terry Wilson, his stats don't look that great, but, man, did he play great at the Swamp, threw some beautiful deep balls, ran for over 100 yards. He's very capable, and from what I've been told and read, he's had a pretty good offseason. But keep in mind, they've got the Troy grad transfer, Sawyer Smith. So if Wilson struggles, they do have a guy that's won a lot of football games in Sawyer Smith. But, look, Kentucky, I look at them. I've got them going 6-6. I had them 6-4 with 2 swing games being Tennessee at home and the other what was my other swing game for them? Oh, at Vanderbilt. So I think they'll go 6-6 or 5-7, and the win total is at 6. I think it's a stay away.
Yeah, Kentucky had to me last year they're more fake news, and the reason is because they caught a lot of teams at the right time. They're at 5.6 yards per play. They gave up 5.24. They were solid on defense, and they didn't turn the ball over that much. I thought Josh Allen was a stud and deserved to be top 10, top 20 draft pick like we saw. I think Benny Snell was amazing. So if A.J. Rose can be anything like him, that's a huge plus. I really like their linebacker, Cash Daniel. That kid's got some fire to him. But when you're looking at replacing production, they do only return like 4 starters on offense, and it's not. And being in the SEC like this, it doesn't make me want to run to the counter, right? Tough games against Florida, Mississippi State, at Georgia, at South Carolina, at Vandy. So we'll keep an eye on Kentucky to see if they can keep those unders rolling for us, but we'll see what happens. So that brings up the Vols, and where they had that crazy Auburn win last year. What are your thoughts on Tennessee?
Well, the win total 6.5 flat. I have them 4-4 with 4 swing games, and that's given them a W against BYU, which they were only 3.5-point favorite games of the year a few weeks ago. I looked the other day, and that line was up to 5. But the 4 swing games being Mississippi State at home, like I mentioned earlier, Mississippi State gets 2 weeks to prepare for that, and UT is coming off facing Georgia. The other swing games, Vanderbilt at home, at Kentucky, where Kentucky has the 2 weeks to prepare, and and South Carolina at home. Games of the year spread is pick 'em. I think they'll lose to South Carolina at home. I think they'll lose at Kentucky. I think they probably lose to Mississippi State. And Vandy's owned them lately. So, Tennessee could be anywhere from 4-8 to maybe 7-5. I would lean more toward a 5-7 or 6-6. So maybe a slight lean to the win total. But, look, Garantano's pretty good. They lost some of their better defensive players, however. Only 6 starters back on defense. That offense was just so pedestrian last year. And I don't know. I know he's recruited pretty well so far, but I'm just not really feeling Jeremy Pruitt as a head coach. Look, we don't have much to judge him by. He took over a mess, and it was year 1. So, I give him a mulligan on all that. But my sense and my just gut is that he's not going to be a big-time coach. That's just my early opinion. I reserve the right to change it at some point, but that's my thinking after just 1 year and a whole off season.
Well, he's still better than old Butch, right?
That's not that difficult, but yeah, I would give him the edge over Butch.
Well, anyways, I don't have a lot to say about Tennessee. I have heard people, whispers of that they should be better this year, and some more people are higher on him or on them. But I agree. I don't know enough about this team to even think about betting 4 against them. The whole wait and see thing. We'll see what they look against BYU, right? We'll see what they look like. 2 teams are left: Ole Miss and Arkansas. Old Bielema's ex-team. We'll see if he left this place on a decent for Chad Morris or not. And we got Ole Miss obviously with Matt Luke. Who are you thinking? Who's better?
I think Ole Miss is better than Arkansas. Matt Luke is all about the Ole Miss brand. He just wants what's good for that school. He kind of reminds me of the late Bill Stewart when he took over for R-Rod at West Virginia. He hired Rich Rodriguez as an offensive coordinator. He hired Mike McIntyre as his defensive coordinator. So, he's got 2 guys that have been really successful as head coaches. So, in other words, he knows he might get fired, and he doesn't really care. He's like, I'm just glad I got this job, and I'm not going to be all paranoid about, the offense is doing well, but our defense is still deplorable like last year, and they fire me and make Rich Rod interim coach. He doesn't care. I kind of respect that, but I kind of agree that I don't think the long game is good for Matt Luke at Ole Miss. Now, Matt Corral will be his quarterback, and they let him play pretty significantly in 4 games, but yet retained his redshirt status. He had originally committed to Florida with McElwain, but when McElwain got fired, he reopened his recruitment. They lost a ton of talent at wide receiver. DeMarcus Lodge, A.J. Brown, and DK Metcalf are gone. Now they bring back their stud running back, Scotty Phillips, who was having a great year until he got hurt in early November. Still almost went over 1,000 yards. But, man, they had – because now they're back to the 85 scholarship limit, so they just had an enormous recruiting class, and they did very well. And they've got a huge influx of junior college guys. So they only have 3 starters back on offense, but I think everybody should kind of take a wait-and-see approach with Ole Miss, because a lot of these junior college guys were very, very highly ranked by the recruiting gurus and whatnot. So this team might be sneaky okay. They can only get better on defense. That was one of the worst SEC defenses I've ever seen in my life last year. They're a 6-point dog at Memphis in the opener. They get a Cal comes to Oxford after they went out there and lost a late-night game to Cal. I think that was 3 years ago rather than 2 years ago. And, we'll see with the Rebels. I don't know what to think of the wide receiver position. I know Corral can move well, and Rich Rod, his history with quarterbacks, Pat White at West Virginia, he likes guys that can run. So it's really a wait-and-see approach for me with Ole Miss. As for Arkansas, they've got an interesting QB battle as well. They've got Starkel from A&M, and they've got Ben Hicks, who was, on track to become one of SMU's all-time leading passers, and he has the history with Chad Morris. So they should be better at quarterback. But their talent is just, it's under everybody else in the SEC, and I see it being a big-time struggle for Arkansas. I've got them 4-7 with one swing game, that being Missouri at home in the regular season finale. If they can win that, I think they'll go 5-7.
Yeah, under 5.5 is highly juiced for them. And for Mississippi, I believe it is under 5 is juiced. So, yeah, you can let them borrow some money from you. Let the books borrow money, but do you really want to wait on that? It's the big question, right? I got to tell you, I think Rich Rod is a better offensive coordinator than he probably is a head coach. So that's going to be interesting how Ole Miss develops. I like what you said about their recruiting class. I think we'll look to them next year a little bit more and see how they finish the season, right?
Yeah, they'll be better on defense, and it's going to be interesting to see Rich Rod. And if you had to, if there's a $10 bill and I had to name who would be the head coach of Ole Miss in 2020 or 2021, I'd probably say it's going to be Rich Rod. I could definitely see him getting this job. So we'll see how it all plays out.
Absolutely, my man. Well, excellent work breaking down the SEC. Literally, you pretty much did the whole preview for everybody. They don't have to get any magazines. They don't have to look online. Your knowledge of this conference was impeccable, Brian. So fantastic job there, man. Real quick, before we go, do you have any plays for our listeners, whether it be the first week of the season or any totals?
Yeah, I think I mentioned 3 of them. South Carolina -7 against North Carolina and Charlotte. Florida -7 against Miami and Orlando. Over 60.5, Alabama, Duke. I also like Hawaii. I actually got it at +12 more than a month ago. It's now down to 11. I even saw a couple books that moved to 10.5. Hosting Arizona, the late night game after the Canes and Gators on August 24th. And I also like under 58.5 on Auburn, Oregon. Oregon has got a really good O-line, but I still like that matchup with Auburn's D-line to go Auburn's way. And with the young quarterbacks, I think Malzahn will try to run the ball, eat clock, not put his freshman quarterbacks in a position where they can make a critical mistake in what will probably be a close game. So under 58.5 there. I like over 5.5 on Hawaii's season win total. Remember, they get 13 regular season games, unlike everybody else. And so Hawaii could go 6-7 and cash the over. They've got 9 starters back on each side of the ball. Cole McDonald, 36-10 TDI&T ratio last year. He's got 2 of his top 3 wide receivers back, and they also add Melkeith Stovall, who was a 4-star recruit to Cal in that same recruiting class as Demetrius Robertson that I mentioned that's at Georgia now, back with Sonny Dykes a few years ago. He had a nice freshman year for Cal. Then he had some issues. I think they were academic. He went JUCO. Now he's at Hawaii. They've got Cedric Byrd and JoJo Ward back. Hawaii's going to be pretty good this year, but the schedule's a lot tougher. I don't know that they'll go 8-5 like they did last year, or I guess they went 8-6 with losing the bowl game. But I like Hawaii over 5.5. Oh, and I like Virginia over 8 at plus money. Bryce Perkins and just the ACC being down, and their schedule works. They don't have to play Clemson, and they get FSU at home from the other division in the ACC. So I like Virginia to have a big year and maybe even get the ACC championship game for the first time, because that side of the whole conference outside of Clemson's garbage.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, and to be honest with you, I took Virginia 3-4 weeks back, whatever, at 7.5, gave that out on a podcast and a newsletter. So I totally agree with you on that. Virginia, I wouldn't necessarily, I wouldn't take them to win the ACC at all. They're probably going to lay minus 2,000, or Clemson will be laying minus 2,000 by the time they're playing each other. That could happen. Clemson's favored by, I think, 17 points every single game. But love the win total bet, especially Hawaii. I got Hawaii second in the West in the Mountain West. I got San Diego State first, and I have Hawaii second. So that's a hell of a play right there, being over 5.5. I love what you said about Oregon versus Auburn. Everyone still thinks about Oregon as like some sort of Chip Kelly high-flying offense. Well, they only averaged 49th in pace last year. They're at 74 plays per game, and Auburn averaged 80th. So that's a great total. I can see that thing going down. So I recommend getting that one right away if you haven't already. One spread that's getting a little too high for me, to be honest with you, is SEC. It's an SEC game. It's LSU versus Georgia Southern. You have to remember, LSU is playing at Texas the week after, and Georgia Southern is an option team that runs the ball. There's literally very, very little, possessions that teams have. They're the slowest playing team out of everybody, averaging 59 plays per game. I'm not sure if A, LSU cares about blowing them out, and B, I think they're going to be playing their second and third string before the fourth quarter even starts. So gives Georgia Southern some options to score a little bit of backdoor as well. I think from a power rating side, I think I have it at about 25 points. But from a spot side, I'm thinking I'm going to take Georgia Southern. So I'm going to watch a little bit more, but that'll be my free play.
I don't have the stat in front of me, but I know I've used it in some big underdog spots for Georgia Southern through the years. They're against the spread record as a double-digit road underdog to Power 5 teams is amazing. Mm-hmm. You can go back like 10 or 12 years, and I'll just add on to what you said. Shy Works, the quarterback, yeah, they do mostly run it, but he did throw 10 touchdown passes and 0 interceptions last year. But I will point out, however, Georgia Southern went 10-3 last year, but net yardage, they were minus 154. They have a great field goal kicker, and they were plus 22 in turnover margin. So that kind of scares me in that, they were winning the turnover battle all the time. But, sometimes people look at that and say, oh, it won't happen again this year. But, sometimes that happens because you got a quarterback taking care of the football, and you've got defensive players, making plays and creating turnovers. So, we'll see. But I can't argue with that line of thinking, Kiev, because Georgia Southern as a big dog to Power 5 teams has been cash money many, many times over the last 10 to 20 years. Yeah,
absolutely. And just the pace of play there, you got to factor that in, and you got to factor in LSU's second half motivation there. They are going to want us to be healthy for that big game against Texas. Now, I'm not saying LSU couldn't beat them by 27 points if they tried. I'm just saying that there's not going to be enough time of the day to do it. So I'm glad you agree with me on that one, my man. We're out of time. Brian, thank you so much for coming on and talking to all of us about the SEC. You gave us a ton of plays. We owe you. So you listeners out there, you check out BrianEdwardsSports.com and check out some of this man's plays. He's definitely one of the top in the business.
Thanks, Kiev, man. The timing is perfect. I just pulled in to my driveway, so I'm home from Biloxi. I'm done with the interstate, and thanks for all the plugs. And, yeah, your listeners, check out the new website, majorwager.com, and you can follow that on Twitter at Major Wager Uno, U-N-O, and my Twitter is at Vegas V. Edwards. Thanks so much for having me, Kiev. Good luck. I know I'll be talking to you soon.
All right, Brian. Thanks. And you listeners out there, thank you for listening to the Odds Breakers. Please share, review, rate, and subscribe if you haven't already. Have a great weekend and go get some winners.